Both Republicans and Democrats are claiming victory after today's impeachment inquiry hearings. After the hearing, House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff laid out the case Democrats were trying to make with their witnesses, while Republican Jim Jordan defended the president.
This is something Zelensky clearly wanted and came back to time after time, and his people came back time after time. When are we going to get that meeting? When are we going to schedule that meeting that you said we would get? And time again, the answer came back. We first want you to commit to these political investigations to help the president's reelection campaign, and we want you to do it publicly.
Their first two witnesses, neither one of them's ever talked to the president, talked to Chief of Staff Mulvaney, or talked with Mayor Giuliani. Again, I think this is a sad chapter for the country, but frankly, a good day for the facts and a good day for the President of the United States.
Caitlin Huey-Burns and Keir Dougall join me now. Caitlin is CBSN political reporter. Keir is a CBSN legal contributor and former assistant U.S. attorney in New York's Eastern District. Welcome to both of you. So, Keir, this was interesting format-wise. First of all, let's start there. You had extended sort of time with these lawyers on both sides who were not necessarily familiar faces to people who might have been watching. But what was your thought on the way in which both sides used their attorneys, Daniel Goldman and Stephen Castor? How effective was that?
Well, I thought they were both effective, certainly more effective than the 5-minute trade back and forth rule that we normally see in these congressional hearings. I think it was wise to hand off questioning to Goldman, who is a former federal prosecutor, obviously skilled in examining a witness, doing it in a continuous fashion. Mr. Castor, I understand, has been counsel to the Republicans in Congress for some time. Obviously, he's skilled as well. So I think Mr. Goldman's job was to get right to the heart of the story, to get to the important part of the story, do it quickly. He didn't have a whole lot of time. And I think what Mr. Castor's role was to sort of start to try to bring out some of the defenses that we've been seeing over this last several weeks for the Republicans.
And Caitlin, how did their questioning compare to what we heard from members of Congress themselves?
Well, I agree with Keir that, if we're going to do hearings from now on, it might be best to have these attorneys do them because, like Keir, they ask direct questions and there isn't this political posturing that we see from members of Congress. It's interesting, though. I think the Democratic lawyer made the case for Democrats, laying it out piece by piece, asking questions that presented to the public what actually happened here. And I think that was really important because Democrats faced a challenge going in, which is that most people in our CBS News poll, 73%, have made up their minds about this already. A majority supports the inquiry, but only about 40-something% support actual impeachment of the president. So that was the challenge for Democrats. The interesting thing, though, I think that the Republican lawmakers made a better case for themselves than the lawyer did. I think their questions, as political as they were telling us where they see this argument going.
So, yeah, Keir, walk us through the different strategies here that we saw from both Republicans and Democrats throughout the day.
Right. So on the Democratic side, I think what you're seeing is you want to get to the facts quickly, right? You can lose a jury very quickly. So, and right now, I think the American public is the audience that this is directed to. So, yeah. I think you wanted to have a concise recitation from two witnesses who are very credible. They say they're nonpartisan. They say, both of them say, we are not never Trumpers. We're just here for the facts. We're not here to to decide or take a position on impeachment. So I think that was effective. On the Republican side, Mr. Castor, his effort, I think, was in some ways easier, in some ways harder, right? And easier because he didn't have a specific narrative that he had to get out. He simply needed to make some points. His looked to me a little bit more like a cross-examination where you do a little bit of probing, you see where you're scoring points, you develop those. I saw cases where he would toss an idea out and then back away when it didn't seem like it was making progress. So I thought that they both, they both executed their job well.
So I want to play a clip from Texas Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro's question to Taylor and Kent about the Republican defense of the president. Let's listen to that.
The other side has claimed or has defended the president, saying that the aid went through, that there was never any investigation. But the president attempted to get those things done. And it looks like there was an initial agreement by the president of the Ukraine to actually do those things. So, ambassadors, is attempted murder a crime? Is attempted murder a crime?
Attempted murder is a crime.
Is attempted robbery a crime?
Neither of us is a lawyer, but
I think anybody in this room could answer that
I
question.
think that's right. And I'll go out on a limb and say, yes, it is.
Is attempted extortion and bribery a crime?
I don't know, sir.
Okay, so Keir, they are not lawyers, but you are. What are your thoughts on this? First of all, is attempted extortion and bribery a crime?
Sure it is. Look, we're talking about an area of, in the technical language, is an inchoate crime. And the other one that's an inchoate crime is a conspiracy. So there are lots of people in federal prison who engaged in a conspiracy that wasn't successful. For instance, a drug buy, the simplest case where you engage in a conspiracy to sell drugs and there's an agent who actually makes is there to make the purchase. Well, that's not a successful drug transaction, but you're guilty because you have committed a conspiracy. The same thing, we don't reward criminals who are unsuccessful when they've taken significant steps, formed the intent, they've taken significant steps toward the crime, and they're unsuccessful. That is not a defense in a criminal case. So again,
but this is not a criminal case.
Right, and Ricky was talking about that in the prior segment, that this isn't a criminal case, it's more political. So, some of these questions, they're really purely by analogy. A lot of the defense is about hearsay, about, is it a complete crime? These things are, by analogy, you would look to the criminal case, but to a criminal case. But in a political setting like this, I don't think they're controlling.
All right, Caitlin, before we move on, we are seeing reports that former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick is telling several leading Democrats he will announce a presidential campaign later this week because it's not a busy enough news week. Help us understand who Deval Patrick is and how he would fit into this race.
Well, he's a former governor from Massachusetts, so he has executive experience. And, he looks to be, if he gets into this race, looks to be making a pitch for New Hampshire as a neighboring former executive. So he could have that going for him. However, I think he also faces significant hurdles. One, he worked for Bain Capital, which of course is going to be a liability, even though he says that his work was not the same as Mitt Romney's, for example. And also, you look at Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, they're also from neighboring states of New Hampshire. They have been doing really well in that state so far, that primary state. This is a very crowded field. We've talked about how Democrats are overwhelmed by their choices, not really wanting more candidates to get in, in fact, wanting it to narrow down a bit. So that is really the struggle. The national name ID is not the same as some others, although he is very loved within the party and especially among former aides to Barack Obama. So that could be an asset. But trying to break through, especially during this impeachment inquiry, which we saw was wall-to-wall coverage everywhere.
Yeah.
It's already a challenge for those in the race. It's an added challenge for someone new.
All right, yet another storyline that we will cover. Caitlin Huey-Burns and Keir Dougall, thank you both very much.